Once you have your auto leveling set up on your Anet printer, one of the best things to do for it is to install a glass bed. Now, rather than spending a lot of money, what I would do is go to your local dollar store and get yourself a 9x9 picture frame. I got this one from my local Dollar Tree for only $1. And while you're out, also get some binder clips so you can hold the glass bed onto the build plate. In addition to covering on how to install this glass bed to your build plate, we're also going to go over how to set up the Z-axis, the temperature you're going to need for this build plate to make sure your prints stick to it well, and also how to set up the script so you can have your prints auto level every time before the print begins so you can have a perfect first layer. Now, this tutorial is going to require that you have Marlin set up on your 3D printer and that you have auto leveling set up. I have tutorials for both of these linked down below if you don't already have them already. This glass bed should fit perfectly on my Anet A6. It should fit perfectly on pretty much any Anet printer with the same size bed. Now, I highly recommend cleaning off the glass that comes off this picture frame with some isopropyl alcohol. This thing comes really dirty out of the package, so it's best to have it as clean as possible. To install the glass bed, place the glass bed on top of the build plate and make sure that there's clearance between the left and right sides of the printer. Otherwise, when it goes to home, it'll just crash into the sides and you don't want that. Also, when putting the binder clips on, take care of where you place them on the bed, as you'll see later on why you need to make sure that you place them in an area where they won't get hit. The next step is to home all axes on your printer. Now, you can do that from this program, which is Simplify 3D, or you can just do it on the printer by using the selector wheel. If you do it on here, you can just easily type G28 to home all axes. Alright, so now we need to figure out the Z offset. To figure out what your Z offset is now, you could type in M851 into your program. Now, mine is 0, and it should be 0 for you unless you've already changed it. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to our offset by going to our printer and using paper to figure out how low the nozzle can go, and then we can type in our value that we get into here. And to do that, it's pretty simple. You just type in M851Z and then whatever value you want, like -5 or whatever. But for now, we're going to leave it at 0. So in my auto leveling tutorial, one value that we adjusted was this one here, the Z clearance between probes value. This value is currently set to 3. And what this value does is when you go to home all, or you type in G28, what will happen is after the homing is done, it'll raise the extruder unit 3 millimeters up. And the reason why it does this is because it needs to be high enough in order for the probe to trigger during the auto level. So we need to keep this value in mind for when we do this. So remember that it's set to 3. Yours might be different, but mine is set to 3. Now go ahead and set your printer to preheat the bed. Now, depending on what type of material you're using, you'll want to select that one. But for me, I'm going to do PLA bed. Now, the standard is 50 degrees Celsius, but because I'm using a glass bed, I have found that the best temperature to use is actually 70 degrees Celsius. And the reason for this is because it allows the PLA to stick to the bed, for the glass anyway, and not move. So I don't need to use any type of glue stick or hairspray or any type of other material in order to get the print to stick to the bed. You can also preheat the bed by going into your machine control panel, typing in your value here, and then pressing on. The first step we need to do is we need to lower the nozzle 3 millimeters, and that's because of that value that I mentioned. So we can go into here, we can go to prepare, move axes, move Z, go to 1 millimeter, and move it down 3. 1, 2, 3. Now it should be set to 0 on this screen. So what we need to do now is we need to take a piece of printer paper, like this one. Try to get it as flat as possible and just standard regular printer paper. Now once your printer is completely preheated, you're going to need to take this piece of paper and you're going to need to stick it underneath the nozzle. Now the reason why we need to preheat the bed first is because when you're printing, the bed's going to be heated up, and sometimes that causes the metal to warp a bit. So you definitely want to make sure it's heated up. Don't do this cold. So stick the paper underneath, and now you can either use the printer or you can use the machine control panel. But I'll use the printer. Go to your axes, move the Z. Now let's move it down 0.1 millimeters at a time. We want to do this in order to prevent the nozzle from crashing into the bed. So just make sure that the paper is moving nice and easily. Now let's move it down 0.1 first. Okay, check again. Nothing. Check one more time. Nothing. So now we're at negative 0.2. Let's go to negative 0.3. Alright, so nothing. 0.4. Nothing. 0.5. Okay, now I'm starting to feel some resistance. So you can go down a little bit more. You can do negative 0.6. And now the paper is really high on the resistance. So we don't want it that tight. So let's go at negative 0.5. I can feel the friction, but it's still enough for me to slide in between. So that is what I'm going to use for my Z offset, is negative 0.5. So now that you have your value, I think it's a really smart idea to double check just to make sure that it's the correct value. So go ahead and auto home your printer. Okay, now let's start from the top just to be sure that our value is correct. So let's move the Z down. Now again, we're going to move it down 3 due to the Z clearance value. So 2, 1, 0. Okay. Now we're going to move the axes down again 0.1 millimeters. So let's take our piece of paper, make sure it's sliding. Now we need to go down. Negative 0.1. Nothing. 2. Okay, so I'm at negative 0.5 now, and it's now sliding freely. This is why I always double check. Ah, now I'm getting friction. So the friction is now negative 0.7. So that is probably going to be my value now. I could triple check, and I probably will outside of this clip, but for now I believe that negative 0.7 is going to be the correct value. So we'll go ahead and work with that. Alright, so back in our program, we need to type in M851Z and our new value. So we're going to do Z negative 0.7 in my case. Whatever your value is, you need to type it into here. Hit enter, and now the Z offset is set, but it's only set in the memory. So we need to load it into the ROM permanently. So to do that, type in M500 and then type in M501 to load it back. And now, as you can see right there, Z probe offset says Z negative 0.7. So that is the correct Z offset that we needed. So now that we got that set up, now we can get on to setting up auto level for our prints. Now there are two ways that you can handle auto leveling, and that is to, one, auto level the printer and then save the matrix into ROM permanently, or you can have it auto level every time before the print in order to have a fresh clean slate. I prefer the latter only because I've had a few times to where my bed went off level or it warped a little bit, and I had to end up re-leveling it anyway, so I ended up having a first layer fail or something. So I prefer to just put it in the script, so for every print that I run, it can auto level and it'll be fresh every single time. So in order to do that, in Simplify 3D, go to Edit Process Settings, go to Scripts, and you can add under the starting script, you can add a G29 code right after the G28. So all you need to do is type in the G29. If you want to comment it, you leave a semicolon, and then you can type auto level right after. So that's an easy way to add it, and every single time that you run a print, it'll run the auto leveling system. Now if you're using Cura, it's a little bit different. Go to Settings, go to Printer, go to Manage Printers, click on the printer that you're using. In my case, it's an Anet A6. Now this doesn't actually come stock, I had to make this profile separately, but I base it off the Prusa profile. Go to Machine Settings, and under Start G Code, go to where Home All Axes is, and type in G29. And now every time your printer runs, it'll auto level it. It's as simple as that. So right now I'm running the auto level system before the print that I'm working on, and as you can see, I'm just picking off little pieces of filament that are coming off while the bed's leveling, because the extruder is already preheated, so everything's oozing out of it right now. I currently have Marlin set up to grid max points at 7, which means that it's probing 7 points left to right and 7 areas front to back. So that's why it's probing a lot of points on mine. Yours might only be probing 5 because that's the default setting, but if you find that your auto levels aren't coming out right on the first layers, you might consider increasing the grid max points to 7. So I had mentioned about placing your binder clips in a safe position so they don't get hit, and you're about to see why. Yeah, so that flicked off and broke off a big chunk of the glass. So now I'm going to have to get a new glass bed for this. Of course it's only $1, but it's best to just avoid it altogether. Place your binder clips in a good location so they won't get hit. Most likely on the sides would be a better option. So I was pretty worried there that the binder clip would hit and break that side of the glass, so I ended up taking it off right before the nozzle hit it. Thankfully it didn't even really come close, so I believe it's pretty safe to have it on the side like this. So my first layer was successful on this print, and thankfully it didn't warp up at any point as the print continued. If you'd like to see the finished product, please consider following me on Instagram. I'll leave the link down below in the description, as well as links for everything else you'll need for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.